Okay, let's dive right in. We are unpacking a system that is at the same time this incredible feat of biological engineering, and also the reason so many of us feel completely and utterly burnt out. Today, we're wrestling with stress.
It really is the ultimate paradox, isn't it?
Mm.
The sources we've looked at, they map out this whole journey
Mm-hmm.
from its, ancient origins as a
Well,
lifesaver,
guaranteed lifesaver.
right,
Yeah.
to its modern status as this silent systemic destroyer.
And the central fact, the thing you really need to absorb right now is this. Stress is an ancient superpower that is, well, it's slowly killing you. It's this double-edged sword that, yeah, it gives you this incredible ability to rise to a challenge, to hit peak performance. But the sources are so clear on this, it demands a huge payment. It claims a chunk of your life force in return.
Precisely. And that's the core of this deep dive. Our mission is to really understand this biological mismatch. We need to define stress not just as a feeling, but as a physiological state. We need to get why this amazing mechanism designed for survival became so harmful in our, 21st century lives. And crucially, how you can learn to use this power correctly to escape the inevitable consequences.
So let's jump in. We're dealing with human biology that hasn't really changed in 50,000 years, but it's facing a world that invents a new source of existential dread every, Tuesday. We have to go deep on how this amazing primitive powerhouse actually works.
To understand the modern problem, we have to appreciate the ancient brilliance behind it. And that means we start at the absolute foundation of all biology: homeostasis.
The state of perfect internal balance. It sounds simple, but it's not a passive thing, is it? It's a constant active process. It's not just sitting still. It's your body regulating temperature, blood sugar, oxygen. A nonstop dance of equilibrium.
It is the biological goal. Every single living thing is constantly making these little micro adjustments to stay in that state of harmony. Finding shade, drinking water, eating. All of these are gentle nudges back to balance. So picture it. 50,000 years ago, is chilling by the fire. Suddenly, a huge, starving saber-toothed tiger appears. The teeth are glinting in the firelight. This is a critical stressor, a sudden, unambiguous life-or-death threat.
And boom, the superpower is activated. His brain sees the threat, and the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis,
The command center.
right, the command center of the stress response, just slams down the emergency lever.
Yeah.
So what's the very first, the immediate chemical weapon it deploys?
Adrenaline. It's the immediate response. It's a neurotransmitter that also acts as a hormone, and it's unleashed instantly by the adrenal glands. Its one job is to activate fight or flight. It demands instantaneous physical action.
And we're talking about incredible, immediate physical changes. His heart starts pounding, not just faster, but harder, right? Increasing cardiac output by a huge amount. His lungs accelerate, pulling in as much oxygen as they can. It's a total emergency redirection of the supply chain.
It's ruthlessly practical. I mean, adrenaline knows energy has to be spent right now. It forces blood flow to be redirected away from core organs like your stomach or reproductive system.
Things you don't need at that moment.
Exactly. And straight into the skeletal muscles. This is why feels that sudden, massive ramp-up of strength and speed. He is literally being powered up for maximum exertion.
What about the sensory changes? That has to be one of the most powerful parts of that rush.
Oh, absolutely. The perception of pain and fatigue is almost instantly muted. Evolution basically decided that a twisted ankle is completely irrelevant if you're about to be eaten. At the same time, his senses, hearing, sight, spatial awareness, they all become hyper-focused, super sharp. His entire focus is locked on the threat. Every single fiber of his being is optimized for the next 60 seconds.
And that super focused state forces the quick decision. The tiger is pouncing, and who has no time to think, just attacks. The sources say he chooses to fight without conscious thought. That's pure adrenaline.
Yes, adrenaline is the quick fix. But fighting a tiger or, running for your life, that's an ordeal. It could take minutes, maybe even hours. Needs sustained fuel. He needs endurance. Which brings us to the strategic hormone.
Cortisol, the long game strategist. So if adrenaline is the immediate tactical blast, cortisol is the logistical general for the long siege.
You got it. Cortisol, which is a glucocorticoid steroid hormone, is slower to release. It usually takes a few minutes to peak. Its job is to make sure has continued access to fuel. It orders the liver to just release massive amounts of stored glucose, making sure his blood sugar stays elevated to feed the fighting muscles and the hyper-alert brain.
So the body is essentially put into this total system takeover mode. What does that do to all the non-essential functions?
That means a ruthless suppression. Cortisol suppresses anything that uses energy but isn't critical for immediate combat. That includes the digestive system, as we said, but critically, it also suppresses the highly energy-intensive functions of the immune system and any growth or repair mechanisms. Ur's body belongs completely to the survival state.
Okay, but how long can the body actually sustain that? I mean,
Okay.
that complete takeover has to start doing damage at some point. The genius of the ancient system has to be the off switch, right?
That is the crucial evolutionary component. The stress response is designed to be acute, short, sharp, and decisive. Fights, he survives, he deals the killing blow, and the threat is gone. This triggers the essential release. The brain signals the HPA axis to shut down the cascade.
And the body goes from maximum overdrive to the glorious rest and digest phase.
Precisely. The parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS, takes over from the sympathetic nervous system. Heart rate slows, blood pressure drops, the muscles start to relax. And all those muted pain signals come rushing back in. Is exhausted, he's sore, maybe he's wounded.
And the sources are so clear. This recovery time is absolutely non-negotiable. This is when and his tribe, they rest, they heal, they eat, and crucially, they process what just happened psychologically. They reinforce the bonds that got them through it.
And only through that massive period of relaxation and sleep does the body restore all its internal systems and finally get back to homeostasis. The stress response saved Ur's life, it gave him a temporary superpower, and then it demanded its payment in full rest and recovery before it bowed out.
It was a temporary loan of maximum physical power, paid back with downtime. The problem, of course, is that we inherited that exact same incredible mechanism, but we seem to have lost the return address for the payment.
This is where we shift from ancient necessity to modern catastrophe. Our sources all emphasize this one fundamental truth. Human civilization has changed exponentially, but our core biological threat detection system, it's exactly the same as Ur's. This is the biological time lag.
So our system is still operating on that primitive protocol. Sense a stressor, deploy full resources immediately, prioritize surviving the present moment, and, ruthlessly sacrifice long-term health if you have to, which, if you're jumping out of the way of a car, is perfect.
Absolutely. The system is flawless for those kinds of acute physical threats. The problem comes when the threat shifts from something concrete and immediate to something abstract and chronic. Modern stressors are so problematic because, well, they're intangible, they persist for weeks or months, and most importantly, they usually don't require any physical action.
You don't get to punch the stressor in the mouth. It's not a tiger anymore. It's an angry email or a looming deadline or rush hour traffic that just tacked on an extra 40 minutes to your commute.
And think about it from your poor brain's perspective.
Yeah.
It's hardwired to take fear seriously. It has one major lever, the HPA axis, and it just assumes if you're feeling dread, there must be a physical danger. It cannot tell the difference between a 600-pound predator and, say, a strongly worded performance review email with 3 bullet points and an attachment.
The deadly email. Oh, man. I think we've all felt that involuntary reaction. You read the subject line, your stomach just drops, and you realize your jaw has automatically clenched up. That's the tiger right there. You're sitting perfectly still, but inside, your heart rate just spiked, your muscles are flooded with glucose, and you're ready to sprint. But you're just reacting to text.
And because the threat is abstract, it's not going anywhere, the system stays on. The initial surge of adrenaline is followed by the sustained presence of cortisol ready for the siege. But the siege is now just you, sitting at your desk, clenching your glutes, and silently typing, per my previous email.
And this creates what the sources call a micro-threat cascade. We get hit with dozens of these small daily stressors, the frantic alerts on our phones, the low-level anxiety from scrolling through Instagram, the sheer noise of the city, or the worst offender, doom scrolling the news.
Doom scrolling is a perfect example of this biological hijacking. The negative, shocking, uncertain content feeds directly into the brain's threat detection system. Our minds crave certainty, and when we see all this chaos and tragedy online, the HPA axis is repeatedly nudged, activating the stress response, even if we barely notice it anymore. We are constantly tapping the emergency override button for no good reason.
And these micro-threats aren't happening in a vacuum. They stack up. They're compounded by the larger, sustained, abstract stressors that really fuel chronic stress.
Oh, absolutely. These are the macro threats that have no clear resolution. We're talking about job insecurity, the anxiety of, rising rents or inflation, the complexity of healthcare cost, or just that pervasive high-alert background hum that comes from general uncertainty about the future, whether it's political or environmental.
And those don't go away just because you made it through the day. They're always there, in the background.
They are. And this leads us right into the addictive trap. We have to be honest here. That acute boost from stress can feel exhilarating. That focused energy, that heightened perception, the ability to pull an all-nighter for a huge deadline, it feels like you've unlocked peak human performance.
I know so many people, especially in really competitive fields, who basically run on that feeling. They mistake the physical symptoms of the stress response, the hyperfocus, the quick thinking for true sustainable excellence. They just keep pushing, relying on that cortisol hit to get them going.
It becomes a performance metric for them. If they aren't feeling that pressure, that urgency, they feel like they're being lazy or unproductive. They literally get addicted to that neurochemical cocktail. Yeah. But here is the massive, non-negotiable crux of the matter.
Stress was only ever meant for short bursts, for critical moments.
And when the system stays activated over days, weeks, and months, with no essential release, no style recovery phase, it transitions into chronic stress. And the sources are definitive on this. Chronic stress is not just unpleasant, it is one of the most destructive and deadliest conditions known to modern humans. We have taken a life-saving feature and weaponized it against ourselves.
We've engineered a life where the metaphorical tiger is always in the room, constantly demanding resources, but we never get to fight or run, and we certainly never, ever get to rest. It's like biological motion sickness for the soul.
So let's get into the exact costs. The price of chronic stress is a slow, systemic dismantling of your body and your brain. It's all driven by that constant flood of adrenaline and cortisol, which keeps fight or flight perpetually on and rest and digest permanently off.
And this isn't just about feeling tired. We're talking about fundamental changes to your metabolism, your circulation, your immunity, even your brain structure. Let's start with the physical and metabolic toll.
Okay, first, the visible damage. Muscle tension. Those muscles were primed to sprint or fight, but that energy was never used. So the resulting physical tension translates into chronic pain, especially in the neck, shoulders, and lower back, and of course, tension headaches.
And the digestive tract is still being ignored because the body thinks the tiger is still around the corner.
Exactly. The GI tract is repeatedly sidelined. This causes a whole host of irritable bowel symptoms, chronic cramps, and the disruption of your healthy gut biome, which we're learning is just central to overall health.
Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of fat and metabolism, because the description in the sources is fascinating. It's also terrifying. Why does chronic stress specifically make us hold on to fat, particularly around the belly?
It's a cascading failure, and it's all driven by cortisol. Cortisol's main job in stress is to keep blood sugar high for energy. So it tells the liver to continuously dump glucose into the bloodstream, which basically makes your cells less responsive to insulin. This is called insulin resistance.
So you have a flood of glucose and then a resulting flood of insulin trying to deal with it all.
Exactly. And this constant state of high insulin hyperinsulinemia is metabolic chaos. Insulin is a powerful storage hormone. When it's always high, your body favors storing fat over breaking it down. Crucially, cortisol receptors are denser around your abdominal area, which means the body preferentially deposits this fat as visceral fat, the kind stored deep around your organs, which is the most dangerous kind for your heart.
Wow. So chronic stress doesn't just make you gain weight. It literally programs your body to store the most dangerous type of fat, which then massively increases your risk of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. That is a fundamental system failure.
And that failure directly impacts your cardiovascular system.
The heart is the engine, and it's just running on overdrive 24/7. That can't be sustainable.
It's incredibly destructive. The constant pounding, the elevated heart rate, and the perpetual vasoconstriction, the narrowing of blood vessels, it all leads to chronic hypertension. But the real damage is often microscopic. It's called endothelial dysfunction.
Okay, what exactly is endothelial dysfunction?
So the endothelium is the thin layer of cells lining all of your blood vessels. They're like the gatekeepers for vascular health. Chronic high cortisol levels physically damage these cells, making the blood vessel walls stiff and less elastic. When your vessels can't relax properly, blood pressure stays high, and those damaged surfaces become prime real estate for plaque to build up.
So stress is literally eroding the infrastructure of our circulatory system from the inside out.
It is. This combination of chronic hypertension, sustained high heart rate, and arterial damage, it massively increases the risk of a catastrophic cardiovascular event, like a heart attack or stroke, often years or even decades earlier than you'd expect.
Okay, here's where it gets really weird and counterintuitive, and where the sources had to be super specific. The immune system paradox. How can your body get weaker and stronger at the same time in a way that is just maximally self-destructive?
You have to differentiate between the two branches of immunity, innate and adaptive. Innate immunity is your fast, nonspecific first responder. It causes inflammation, swelling, immediate wound sealing, that kind of thing. Adaptive immunity is your specialized long-term defense. Your T cells, B cells, the parts that fight specific viruses and give you lasting memory against disease.
And when there's a tiger in the room.
Cortisol makes an evolutionary bet. Immediate physical trauma is the top priority. Therefore, cortisol boosts the innate inflammatory response because needs to seal a cut quickly. At the very same time, cortisol suppresses the energy-intensive adaptive immune response.
The T cells and B cells are put on pause.
Exactly. Who cares about getting the flu when you might bleed out in the next 5 minutes?
Yeah.
But in modern life, this suppression means chronic stress makes you more susceptible to infections, it slows down your recovery from illness, and it can even increase your risk of cancer because that surveillance is reduced. And at the same time, those massively boosted inflammatory cells have nothing physical to fix.
Wow. So stress is basically turning on this widespread internal inflammation all over your body, while at the same time weakening your long-term defenses against serious disease. It's an autoimmune disaster waiting to happen.
It's chronic inflammation driven by a biological miscalculation. But the destruction doesn't stop with the body. The brain is profoundly rewired to serve this state of perpetual emergency.
People always say they can't think straight when they're stressed. And our sources confirm this is scientifically accurate. It's because the brain perceives an ongoing critical threat.
That's because the resources shift dramatically. The part of your brain responsible for calm, deliberate thinking, the prefrontal cortex, it literally atrophies under chronic stress. Its processes like abstract planning, logical reasoning, and impulse control all slow down.
And what takes over?
The amygdala, your fear and alarm center. It becomes hyperactive. The brain starts to prioritize rapid, reactive thought processes, quick answers, short-term survival instincts over any kind of complex analysis, and the consequence is severe. You literally get worse at thinking clearly. You lose those wisdom points you need for complex problem solving.
Which just makes everything worse, doesn't it? Because now you're much more likely to make bad, impulsive decisions, the kind of decisions that just add to the stress you're already under.
Correct. Impulsive actions like rage quitting a job, overeating, or turning to substance abuse are all consequences of an amygdala-driven brain. You are actively degrading your ability to solve the stressful situation while you're creating new stressors.
That truly is the vicious circle. The longer you are stuck in chronic stress, the more your cognitive ability breaks down, making it nearly impossible to clearly think your way out of the trap. The final consequence is pretty clear: diminished quality of life, increased anxiety and depression, and a significantly shortened lifespan.
Okay, so having laid out that pretty bleak picture, let's pivot back to the good news. That stress response is still a superpower. We can't get rid of it, and we shouldn't even want to. It's the mechanism that allows us to perform under pressure and to grow.
Right. The goal isn't to eliminate stress. Life is always going to throw challenges your way. The goal is to master the transition. The sources really emphasize that in measured, acute doses, stress is what enables us to conquer goals, to push our comfort zones, and to make peak performance feel truly amazing.
But to get to that sustainable performance, we have to learn how to wind down the fight-or-flight response and get into that recovery phase consistently. This is where we stop being slaves to the system and start being its master.
Strategy 1. Listen, assess, and break. This sounds basic, but it's so foundational because so many of us just try to power through the feeling.
You have to acknowledge the reality immediately. If you feel stressed, you are stressed. Full stop. Don't rationalize it. Don't minimize it. The sources reject this idea that you need to meet some universal threshold before you're allowed to take action. Your body's signals are the only threshold that matter.
And once you've acknowledged it, you do the critical assessment. Is the stress productive? And is there a defined endpoint? If you're in the middle of a marathon or studying for a specific important exam, that stress is actively helping you.
And if the answer is yes, then you use that power, but you immediately plan the recovery phase. If the answer is no, if the stress is chronic, abstract, and endless, then you move towards systematic removal, which we'll get to. But even during productive stress, you need planned breaks. And this leads to strategy 2. Active relaxation is serious self-care.
We have to fundamentally reframe what relaxation is. It's not an indulgence. It's not a reward for being productive. It is serious, non-negotiable self-care that's necessary to pay the biological bill you just incurred. It prevents stress from claiming its price.
And it needs to be active and regular. Passive relaxation, like just watching TV or scrolling on your phone, doesn't actually transition the body out of fight or flight mode. Active relaxation uses up the physical resources the body mobilized.
So what counts as active relaxation in this context?
We're talking about things that introduce autonomy, physical movement, or focused attention. Meeting friends' social connection is a powerful PNS activator. Working out, you're literally burning off the excess adrenaline and glucose. Or just going for a focused walk in nature. The change in sensory input and rhythm is highly effective. The key is to schedule this time like it's a mandatory appointment, but without generating new stress over the scheduling itself.
That's a crucial distinction. Don't let your self-care become just another item on your to-do list that gives you anxiety. Okay, strategy 3 targets the core mechanism, influencing the hormonal response itself through mindfulness.
Right. So you cannot stop that initial hormonal dump. That's involuntary. But you can profoundly influence how long it lasts and how intensely your brain reinforces it. Mindfulness techniques are scientifically proven to increase what's called vagal tone.
Vagal tone refers to the health of the vagus nerve, right? Which is the main pathway for the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest command.
Exactly. Training your vagus nerve means training your ability to transition out of the emergency state more quickly. The sources point to techniques like diaphragmatic breathing, like the 4-7-8 method or focused body scanning meditation. These techniques are physical inputs designed to tell your ancient brain, I am safe, my breathing is slow, this angry email is not a deadly tiger lunging at me.
So you're overriding the fear signal with intentional physiological inputs. Your body learns that these signals mean safety, and the HPA axis starts to quiet down faster.
That is the goal, to bridge the gap between the primitive alarm system and modern reality. But if we're looking for the single most effective intervention against chronic stress, strategy 4 is definitive. Remove the stressor itself.
This requires some ruthless honesty. You have to become your own personal assistant and do a kind of stress audit, assessing where those microbursts of stress are coming from every day.
Take the perfect example of doom scrolling. Negative, shocking, and emotionally volatile content drives maximum engagement online. By getting rid of those apps, muting notifications, or aggressively unfollowing people who introduce negativity or comparison into your feed, you can eliminate a huge source of ambient, low-level chronic stress. You're just removing friction.
It's that constant drip, drip, drip of small anxieties that wears us down. Removing those tiny triggers gives your nervous system a massive break.
And this applies to the big foundational stressors too. The drastic advice is often the most effective. If your stress is driven by a toxic job, you need to systematically plan your exit, even if it feels impossible. If your environment itself is the threat, say living in a dangerous or just overly noisy neighborhood, making midterm changes to change your environment completely will have the single biggest impact on your chronic stress levels.
It's about changing the circumstances, not just managing the symptoms. The goal is to remove the reason the emergency siren is going off in the first place, not just to constantly try and dampen the sound.
But we acknowledge that chronic stress degrades your cognitive abilities. So what happens if you realize you're so deep in the cycle, stuck in stress mode, that your ability to problem solve or implement these changes has completely broken down?
And that's the moment of maximum vulnerability. That leads us to our 5th strategy. When clarity fails, ask for help.
This is the most powerful move you can make when your internal machinery is compromised. Open up to friends or family. Just externalizing the problem and sharing that emotional load is essential. More importantly, seek professional help. A therapist or a counselor can provide that clear, objective reasoning that your stressed-out brain has temporarily lost access to.
An extra pair of clear-headed external hands makes a huge difference in navigating complex situations and systematically beginning that long process of deactivation and system recovery. It's like admitting you need external prefrontal cortex support until your own is back online. Hashtags, #ODOTRO, synthesis and final thought. So, what does this all mean when we put the whole picture together? The key lesson from our deep dive today is that life will always throw stressors our way. And that is fundamentally okay, because stress is inherently an incredible superpower.
The problem is never the capacity for power. The problem is the activation without the scheduled, non-negotiable release. We have to figure out how to use the system acutely without letting it spiral into chronic self-destruction.
You have to build a custom health mix that's tailored to your specific life. Whether that means focusing on structured rest, prioritizing mental health techniques, optimizing your nutrition to counter cortisol's metabolic demands, or ensuring physical fitness to burn off all that mobilized energy. It's about creating a personalized approach to manage that essential transition from high alert back to harmony.
We, as a society, have become absolute masters of activation. We know how to hit the gas pedal for every deadline, every crisis, every challenge, but we are tragically poor students of deactivation. That required recovery time isn't a luxury. It's not a sign of laziness. It is the non-negotiable cost of using the superpower without simultaneously destroying your own biological machinery.
Use the incredible power that evolution granted you to achieve what you need to achieve. But never ever forget the critical necessity of getting to the other side of the stress response. If you don't schedule the landing, you're not just going to crash, you're going to suffer immense systemic damage on the way down. That's the deep dive for today. Now go rest.